won and argued the case at the International Court of Justice, and that was favorably decided. So we are very lucky to have such a multifaceted professional with us, and we would like to hear from him legal issues and challenges eclipsing India Incorporated, remedies to jumpstart of India Incorporated post-COVID-19. Over to you, Advocate Salve, sir.
Good morning from London, or good afternoon in India. Always a pleasure to interact with friends, but I must confess, and I'm sure it is true for most of you, the first time I am participating in what I believe is called a webinar. Up till now, it was only something which I read in emails, which I used to delete promptly. But then this is the new world in which we are all living, and which is going to be my starting point, saying, where are we, where have we found ourselves, and where are we going to possibly find ourselves at the end of this journey? Because when we talk of kickstarting or jump-starting corporate India, when we think of setting the goals for what we need to do post-pandemic, we need to start at the beginning, try and measure what is going to remain after this war. The good thing about what has happened is it has given time to people like me. Arvind is different. Arvind sleeps for 4 hours and spends the rest of his time with letters and books. Not lazy like me. But for a person like me, this has been a good moment to pick up some old books, get rid of the dust, and open their pages and read about World War II. So that's where we are going to be at the end of this, where the world found itself at the end of World War II. And I think it's also time to blow the dust off Keynesian economics. And I was speaking to somebody yesterday who is a very learned economist. He's a big businessman, but he's very good in economics. And I was surprised that my pedestrian level of economics and his level of economics were on par for a change. We both thought by the time this is all over, we will have to go back into the dig and fill. People like Niranjan will have to help by giving people, half of whom will be digging holes and the other half will be filling holes. And the government paying both of them to put life back, to put blood back in this body which has been depleted of blood. What is the world going to be? The world is not going to be the same at the end of this pandemic. The world should not be the same at the end of the pandemic. When you forget the lessons of history, history repeats itself. If we forget the lessons we have learnt from this pandemic, history will repeat itself in the form of some other pandemic, some other global crisis, some other similar catastrophe which will overtake mankind. What are the lessons we have learnt? Some of them are on a philosophical level, as I read one of these morning posts, and you're flooded by them every morning nowadays because everybody has so much time. Life costs very little. Lifestyle is what we spend money on. We need to find perhaps a new balance in life and lifestyle. What was considered to be the global model of development, how is it going to sustain with the new awareness that allowing capital to chase the most efficient resource sometimes becomes incompatible with national interests? When President Trump 3 years back started saying, we will make America great, we will pull manufacturing back, and he had limited success. Not much, as yet. Everybody thought he was being isolationist, and he was just taking a political posture. Today people regret, and I'm telling you, the emotion in the country in which I'm living right now, in the UK, the emotion of grave regret that what used to be one of the countries known for its industrial strength, the sweatshops were in the UK, the 40s and 50s post-World War II. The sense of regret, the sense of anger which the Britishers feel that they have lost even the ability to manufacture personal protection equipment. They are dependent on China, and there is a huge anti-Chinese sentiment all over the world. I don't think that's a secret. The sense of anguish at where they find themselves. Even people in this small island country of Britain are saying, we need to get manufacturing back into this country. How is it going to square with high wages and with the kind of lifestyle which people have become used to in the last 4 decades remains to be seen. This is one massive change the world is going to go through. Now, India is fortunately not in a situation where we have to worry about bringing manufacturing back into India. We have to worry about other countries taking manufacturing back into their countries. And where do we fit in this equation? And that is going to be a huge challenge, not going to be easy. The second question we have to ask ourselves, and we have to start by saying we do not know the answer to this question with any sense of certainty, is, when is this going to end? A month from now, 3 weeks from now, 3 months from now, end of the year. What is going to be the state of the economy 1 month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now? And what is going to be the mindset of people 2 months from now, 3 months from now? How many of us will be ready to take out our wallets on lifestyle? There is a sense of everybody's going back into their cave, trying to save and trying to build reserves. Good for a country like India. Maybe we can push savings rates in India. What steps can we take to cash in on the sentiment to build savings rates in a country like India? It's something we need to look at. Certain industries in the next 3 years have a very gloomy future. Travel industry, for example. They're going to have a very hard time. Bad for India because travel industry is a big employment generator. For all the jobs which are going to be lost in the travel industry, how are we going to create compensatory jobs? And these are the hard questions we need to ask ourselves today, so that when the curtain lifts in whole or in part or in bits, we are ready with our answers. The world is 2 steps ahead of India. I hope we will catch up soon. The American Congress, as we all know, is hopelessly divided on partisan lines, came together to pass the $3 trillion stimulus bill. In UK, Sunak has announced that 5 to 7% of GDP will be put back into the economy to kickstart measures. And what should we do in India? The answer to me is obvious. Inflation rates all over the world are at an all-time low. Interest rates in the world are at an all-time low. LIBOR is dancing between less than 1% to 1%. India interest rates are still 6%. Why this arbitrage? Why not allow Indians, why not allow people in Niranjan's industry to freely borrow from anywhere in the world? Are we still going to worry about the foreign exchange balances? Are we willing to take bold steps? If you ask me for my recipe for curing India, the first thing I would do is cure the Indian sentiment. Repeal FEMA. Do we really need it? Do we really need the Enforcement Directorate? I'm sure those civil servants can be put to better use. They're very clever people in that department. They can be put to better use. Open up, allow the inexpensive capital to come into India. What will that ensure? If interest rates go down, it will help you deficit finance India without risking an increase in inflation. Look at petrol, look at oil prices, never been so low. Your ducks are in a row, as one says. Oil prices at the lowest, interest rates at the lowest. This is the time for all the profligacy which we have indulged in. This is one time where we can print notes and put it back in the system. This morning, from my Indian news feed, I read something which was very worrisome. I believe there is a suggestion to increase the income tax rate and bring back wealth tax. We all know wealth tax doesn't get you revenue. Never has any significant amount. What it does get you is a lot more power of the tax department over the individuals who have to pay wealth tax. So the old Indian mindset is not going. Try and cash in on every situation to increase your turf. We have to get past this. Arvind was mentioning about the kind of changes we have seen in the budget. This kind of bureaucratic nitpicking of trying and making life more and more difficult for the taxpayer. We have to change this mindset. If India has to restart, India Inc. has to restart. We complain about the Indian banking sector. Yes, the Indian banking sector went awry. The Indian banking sector went awry because of corruption in the system. And the banking sector is not the only system which suffers from corruption. We need to fix that. There is no question about it. But if you see on a more global basis, the amount of credit, if you measure it with a reference to GDP, India is very low. The world average is 129%. India's at the highest has been in 50s. South Asia has been low, but then South Asia has poorer countries which drag the average down. We have to break this cycle. Europe is well over 60%. The United States is 187% of GDP as domestic credit. Where do we find ourselves? I was seeing the other day, one of the articles I was reading out of curiosity, I found there is a reference, and Niranjan would know about this more, there is a reference to a report given by Moody's in 2019, December, before this pandemic hit, where they have teed up the real problem. The NBFCs have collapsed. When the NBFCs collapsed, they have taken down the real estate sector, which is possibly one of the biggest employment generating sectors. They have taken down the retail sector, and they have taken down the SME sector. And banks today, because of the kind of enforcement which is going on, the banks today don't want to lend. Other than to gilt-edged companies, and gilt-edged companies don't need bank loans. So we have to break the cycle. You have to put money back. The body has fought this economic infection, plus the pandemic has shut everything down. I perhaps feel there may be a thick silver lining in this cloud. There was a time had come for India to hit reset. And we have hit the reset button. Are we willing to acknowledge that we have hit the reset button? Are we willing to learn from our mistakes of the past and find course correction for the future? My suggestion is that we have identified what went wrong. We know what went wrong. You can go into micro details about which company took excess money and which promoter took money outside India, etc. We can go on those. That's a separate exercise. But broadly, we knew what went wrong. So we strengthen our systems. And that's a parallel exercise. Whether pandemic or no pandemic, systems had to be strengthened. But at the same time, we need to find measures which will help us. And we need to divide them into short-term, medium-term, and long-term measures. In the short term, and we fortunately have sufficient cues from what other countries are doing. Look at what they've done in UK. 3 days back, I got an email, personal email from the Her Majesty's Revenue, the HMRC, saying you needn't file your return in July. You can file it next January. And 3 days later, you read about Indian Tax Department saying increased tax rates. Do we all live on the same planet or we live in different planets? Look at the mindset. Here, the tax department has been emailing personally all big taxpayers saying, don't worry about if you can't file your return, you can file it next January and no interest. Of course, we're not waiving any tax. You have to pay your tax. You can pay it in January next. They have brought a law saying they are bringing a law. The bill is under consideration whenever the parliament is able to function, saying some kind of waiver of rents, residential rents, and they've already provided that no Rent Act eviction cases, no tenancy eviction cases will be heard for the next 6 months. Landlords have been told, we will not allow you to evict people for non-payment of rent. They've issued circulars extending time limits for everything, for annual general meetings, for compliances, for filings. And we need to do that, and you need to trust people. We have come together as a community. I was very happy when a lot of people were critical. I was very happy to see the way India has responded to the Prime Minister's call for coming together at night and holding vigils, for clapping, for doing gestures. He has pulled India back together. He has made us a community once again. Let's start trusting each other. We trust each other in lockdown. Let's trust each other in every other sphere. This huge sense of distrust which had built into the government and the taxpayer, and the government and the industry must go. You have to hold hands and move ahead. You can't say real estate fellows are bad, or the manufacturing fellows are bad, or the road contractors are bad, or the medium enterprise is bad because they cheat from excise, or so on. So all this has to go. We have to come back as a community and have faith in each other. The way today we are standing in for each other. We have to do that in all spheres of our life. I think it will help if somebody in India picks up the emergency legislation which they have brought in Europe, emergency legislation which they have brought in the UK, as to what measures can be taken. Certain government systems can perhaps be changed forever. I think we worked reasonably well on video links and on these. Whatever efficiencies can be improved should be improved. Lessons can be learned. But in the short term, from the day we can, we have to put money back in the hands of people. You have to bring confidence back in the people. There is a sense of fear. There is a sense of foreboding. The fear of death, which this disease has brought, has created a very negative sense in community. It has brought the community back together. Use this as a positive. Bring back faith in the community. Go in for measures of deficit financing. Government has to make loans. Repo rates have to drop. Yesterday, I believe Franklin Templeton, one of India's biggest funds, has stopped redemption. Are we going to have funds going belly up? Are we going to have a run on our funds? Where are we? What are we heading for? If we miss these signs, this is like a patient who's gasping for breath being told, no, go back and take a paracetamol. You have to put a ventilator. Our economy needs a ventilator right now. Why are we shying away from this? And what are the drugs you would administer? The first drug you would administer is give a blood transfusion, i.e. cash in the system. The second is the electrolytes. The electrolytes would be smoothen up doing business in India. Statutory compliances, blink at them. Filings, blink at them. Tax disputes, put them on the back burner. Intrusive investigations into small violations, put them on the back burner. Let people spend their time in their factories, on the shop floor, rather than running to government offices answering show causes. Show the people have put faith in the government and obeyed this lockdown. It's time for the government to show the people the government has faith in the people. This is the new India. This is the new world. We are willing to put cash back in the hands of people. The government has to find the cash to put, unless you reinvigorate the SME sector, you will not create jobs. Unless you reinvigorate the real estate sector, all this migrant labor problem, huge problem. Before you know, this will become a social problem which you cannot handle. You leave 500,000 people on the streets, they will get into your fancy homes one day. How many policemen will you deploy and how many bullets will you use to suppress the rising mob? So we need to read these signs. This has been the best reset opportunity. And I personally feel these are the big challenges. One issue which the government will also have to deal with is they will have to come out with a properly structured statutory force majeure to deal with commercial disputes. Otherwise, there are going to be so many commercial disputes about delays, about non-performance. I mean, I see Kunal looking very upset because he might lose a lot of clients if the government solves the problem on force majeure. But it has to be done. You have to find some way of structuring contractual relations which will phase out. And what is the best place to start? The best place to start is public sector enterprises who have the maximum number of contracts for performance of services. Bring in, and we have to do it now. We have been into the lockdown for long enough. We are now looking at some light at the end of the tunnel. This is the time for confidence building exercises. Arvind flagged some very important unnecessary irritants in the previous Finance Act. Let us see a confidence building measure, repeal them, change them. Government should also say we are looking at community now. We are looking at a different community, this community which came together so strongly to fight this pandemic. This is a different India. Here we trust each other, we have faith in each other, we work for each other. And if this is the lesson we can learn, look at what happened in Japan and look at what happened in Europe. I will only close with this, saying Japan was written off as a hopeless case post-World War II. Everybody said Japan is gone. Europe looked derelict post-World War II. In the next 15 years, Europe and Japan became the two industrial powerhouses of the world. What did they do? They redesigned society. Europe came together as never before. From World War II to the Maastricht Treaty, where a single Europe was created, has been a journey we can all learn from. In this free time, if you read about how Europe became this huge powerhouse. What happened in Japan? From the tatters it was in post-World War II, see where Japan, see the heights to which, the commanding heights to which the Japanese economy rose to. How did they do it? Faith, trust, belief in each other. This is the time where the global community is going to do it. It's happening all over the world. It's happening all around us. This is the time where we also can use this moment to come together and use all the opportunities which are coming up and show the world that this is a different India. This is a modern India, and this pandemic has killed the old sloth bear. And what you now have is a lean, mean fighting economy and a country which dreams as one, which works as one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salve. We are very thrilled that the son of India is thinking for the motherland India, that it shines with glory in the entire globe. We are really, we have people like this. Definitely India will look up and will challenge any economy in the world. Sir, some questions have come. So I'll put right across three questions. One is, normally stimulus packages announced by the government demand some cash outflow. Presently, government is not in position to provide cash outflow. So what kind of stimulus packages can be announced without affecting cash outflow, and yet it will stimulate the industry?
I challenge the premise that the government is not in a position to give cash outflow. I challenge the premise that you need more taxes for cash outflow. Every government is cash strapped. Every government is cash strapped. US has had 7 million claims for unemployment. They are looking at a huge outflow. In UK, the furlough provisions, they are paying £2,500 to every worker, every person who's without a job. So at least the groceries can be bought. Where is the money coming from? Every government owns a mint. This is the time you use your mint. We have deficit financed. Yes, we have done the right thing by bringing in the fiscal deficit cap law. But there are times where you need to print more money. With oil prices today, I believe the oil prices are running at 25, 30, 35. Oil prices at their lowest and interest rates globally at their lowest. We need to channel these two. Don't worry about inflation. Print money, put money back in the system, fill in the hole created by the crash of the NBFCs. Demand will pick up, small, medium enterprise will pick up, real estate will pick up. Within 6 months, you'll start seeing the change in India.
Yes.
We need to be bold. We can't, no use being nervous and fidgety at this time now. It's only the bold who will survive.
Yes. Sir, agriculture and SMEs are the two backbones of Indian economy, and they can really take Indian economy to a growth path and even do better than China. So in this direction, what policy government can adopt for is this SME sector and for agriculture?
See, I again feel the time is now right for a political change even in agriculture. We need to bring in quasi-corporate agriculture in India. I know some models which are being considered. I know, for example, the Reliance retail model. You have large corporations who are willing to take over your agricultural sector, who will give full insurance, who will have advanced contracts and acquire the entire produce at cost of market price, whichever is higher, and for a failed crop will pay for the entire base value of the crop. You have large companies willing to do that. Allow that. Yes, the local politician will lose control over the farmer because the farmer will now no longer be dependent on his local politician for the seed and for the fertilizer and for money for irrigation. But that political change must come. So if we can gear up our agriculture and grow what you can grow. If you can grow rice in Punjab, grow it. Doesn't matter if Punjabis don't eat rice. If you can grow wheat in central India, grow it. Doesn't matter if the central Indians eat rice. Turn agriculture into a powerful business. Make that political change, and small and medium enterprise. These two are going to be the backbone of the new India, which will create employment. And this is the time when we can do it.
Yes, thank you. And it is seen that USA and other countries are filing case against China for spreading this pandemic. How far this is legally tenable and what can be the outcome of these cases?
Well, let me tell you, I'm delighted that somebody is at least making the point of filing a case against China. How far one subscribes to conspiracy theories is a matter of one's own fantasy. But yes, there definitely has been something which went horribly wrong. China has been extremely economical in sharing information and continues to be extremely economical in sharing information. That by itself has to be recognized in public international law as a wrong. And I hope public international law will grow in that dimension. What has been done in the US is something very interesting. In US, they have what is called the effects doctrine, especially under the law in certain states, where if the effect of a wrongful act is felt in the US, then the US court has jurisdiction. So perhaps they are saying by running wet markets and allowing infection to proliferate, the effect has been felt in the US. So a US court can award damages against the municipal corporation of Wuhan for running a wet market. That will be interesting stuff. Of course, enforcing that judgment will be quite another matter. Let's see how they enforce it. But the real thing will be public international law must develop the complete collapse of the WHO mechanism. And let's not mince any words. The WHO has been a bloody hopeless failure. Somebody was telling me that the WHO has warned the Maharashtra chief minister that the worst is yet to come. I said that should be very comforting because everything they've said so far has been wrong. So we need to have now a proper treaty, a treaty with enforceable provisions to deal with pandemics. That is one thing which has come out in public international law, which will have to be worked upon.
Yes, thank you. Panelists, do you have any questions?
Sir, one question which we have received from viewers. Sir, will India be benefited by the outrage against China? Will investment flow in? And will the companies which are quitting China can come to India? What India should do to ensure that these companies do come into India?
There are two steps. Yes, there is a move to move out of China. But India has to stop fantasizing that India is the only destination if you move out of China. There are other destinations. Eastern Europe is a destination. Vietnam is a destination. Indonesia is a destination. Thailand is a destination. We have to make ourselves a friendly destination. There is still a lot of discomfort in coming and doing business in India. And that's why I'm saying this is the time to hit reset. And if we can create the right working environment, yes, India can benefit hugely out of this anti-China sentiment, which undoubtedly, to some extent or the other, is there in every part of the world.
Sir, I'd like to request, may I request, I have a request both to Mr. Harish Salve and to Mr. Arvind Datar that what they have said is something which should not be kept into the portals of the Chartered Accountant Institute, but should be permitted to be published on the front page of every newspaper in India. If this can be converted into an article or a statement, if you can do so. And Mr. Datar too, the 7 points that you have mentioned, if these two could be combined or separate articles could be written, I think you would really make a world of a difference, because I think somewhere down the line, our country just seems to have the ostrich-like thought process on the economic front. I think on the pandemic front, on the COVID virus, the Prime Minister's movement has been unique in the world, and I compliment him. But on the economic side, I think persons like both of you need to give him advice. And it's necessary for us to publish this article. If both of you will permit that to the Institute, or yourself could write it, or we could convert this into an article and send it to you for approval, and we could get it published both. And also, I would request Mr. Salve and Mr. Datar to come on TV. And I promise you the best of the channels will take you up tomorrow morning, if not tonight.
Arvind has a lot to actually say.
I agree with you, and word it should come to the word. Yeah, Mr. Datar. Yeah.
No, Mr. Salve is also answering, please.
No, I was going to toss the ball to Arvind. I was going to toss the ball to Arvind. As always, he writes much better and he's a far more prolific author. So I think Arvind should write something.
Mr. Datar, you are on mute.
You are on mute, Mr. Datar.
Datar, unmute your...
Sir, you are still on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, hear me now? Yes. No, actually,
yes,
what Harish said, the most important thing is a complete change in mind. We must forget the fact that, if you see, for example, our investment treaty, it is so badly drafted that only one country, Belize, has signed the treaty with India. And I did not even know where Belize was till I went to Google and found out it's some tiny island with 100,000 people somewhere in the Caribbean. Now, what is most disturbing is, I don't know if Harish has seen it, I'll send it to Harish. This morning, I got a publication prepared by young IRS officers from after the 2014 batch. And they've prepared what are their suggestions post-COVID-19. And it is, in my opinion, rather disturbing that all the proposals are how to increase the equalization levy from 6% to 8%, how to implement wealth tax, how to tax the rich, how to raise the surcharge to 40%. Everything is just geared to how to raise the tax and soak the rich. I mean, if this is the mindset of young officers, we have a very, very large amount of work to do. We have to realize that, look, if you have to get somewhere, you have to completely drop this baggage and think afresh. That report is very, very disturbing, if this is the mindset.
Sir, I do have a question.
For Mr.
Salve, Harish bhai, my question goes with, basically it relates with the banking. Though RBI has a very bankers surplus sitting there with the RBI, and this is a kind of distrust between the, you can see like business community, corporates and the bankers. Though we are not, I'm not touching upon the bank rates, though interest rates seems to be high, but even the interest, serving of the interest, all corporates are ready, but bankers are not even having trust on the, trust and faith on the business community. And this is a mindset with banker, and same time the revenue officer, like 7 points whatsoever the Arvind Datar bhai has raised with, and with the fiscal, so many measures you and the Arvind Datar bhai has suggested with, though ICI will going with it to prepare some kind of note and bringing out to the notice of the government also, but the banking and the whole of the systematic approach is not been followed with each and every whatsoever is been required with. So trust and the distrust, these two things
we need two changes in our banks.
Yeah, that needs a
take away the Reserve Bank's powers over commercial banking and create a banking regulator which will work transparently, whose reports will be available to stakeholders, even in redacted forms, and from whose orders you will have a transparent appeal if a bank is wrongly targeted, not like what the Reserve Bank does, bullies banks.
So what
economic policy is different. The second important change has to be made is you have to remove a bank officer from the Prevention of Corruption Act. This is the biggest nonsense. There are two completely wrong judgments of Supreme Court which says if you're dealing with public funds, you're a public officer within the meaning of Prevention of Corruption Act. Which bank officer today will take the risk of sanctioning a loan if 3 years back, if the loan is not paid, the CBI visits him? And you know how the Indian criminal justice system is. Indian criminal justice system is the fastest criminal justice system in the world. It's not the slowest. Because in India, arrest, media, you're convicted in 3 days. Allegation, 3 days later you're arrested, paraded, put in jail, not given bail for 3 months, it's over, after which nobody worries about your case. The Indian criminal justice system, from the date of allegation to the date of punishment, is 3 months. No system is as fast as this in the world. But justice somewhere is a word which should be removed. It should be called the Indian criminal punishment system, not the Indian criminal justice system, because there's no justice left. Just see what happens today. There's a list of allegations. The CBI releases that to the newspaper before it files it in a court. And then you arrest and then you parade and the media convicts you. Over the 5 TV channels you're convicted and you're thrown in jail. The judge is scared to give you bail. Now in this system, if a bank officer is put as a public official, why the hell is he going to give a loan? How is he going to give a loan? And why should he give a loan? If he was my client, I'd tell him, don't be stupid. Don't give a loan. Tomorrow you'll find yourself in jail if the loan is not paid. So these are the things which you need to fix with the banking system.
I have a question in addition to what Niranjan Bhai said, and it's a situation, and this is something which I think I will concur with Niranjan Bhai's move to have a note from both of you and add this issue even in the note. Salve, you are talking of having a welfare state. And I'll put two more adjectives to this welfare state, is modern and inclusive welfare state. Because welfare state doesn't mean feed everyone free, but you need everyone inclusive, intertwined within it. And you have to make a modern, inclusive welfare state. Overhaul the system, which is the words which Mr. Datar is using. Overhaul the system. You are saying restart. Then what is the sense of having a task force which is not with any expert or which is not with any stakeholder? The same example, I'll put it in parity with the example that you gave. It's a patient which is gasping for breath but being treated by a general physician. So you're having a task force of people who are not stakeholders, neither experts on the subject.
I don't think you need any expert to tell you what to do right now, quite frankly. The writing is on the wall. We all know what should be done. Those who are people like me who are just superficially familiar with the subject know what should be done. So the people who are in day-to-day working on the financial sector will surely know what can be done. And believe me, there is no great secret about what has to be done. You have to go for deficit financing. Government has to pump more liquidity into the system. Ask anybody superficially familiar with public finance, he'll tell you how to pump money into the system. If you start pumping money into the system, you start making money available cheaply, you bring down interest rate, very easy. You have to access international capital to bring down interest rates. You can't run at 6% and 7%. A time has come where we have to dump this 6, 7, 8% arbitrage in interest rates. So we have to restart the whole system, and you don't need a task force of experts. We all know you don't have time for reports and committees and deliberations. You have to do it next week.
I have just one question for Harish. Just wanted thoughts. There is a big move that there is 56 million tons of food grain lying with food stock. Yeah. Now is the time to liquidate the food stock and give it. What for that? Just now distribute the food grains. Yes.
If you, I don't think it's a bad idea. If for example you take the real estate sector and you say we are going to release capital to you, and we are going to sell food grain cheaply to say a builder to distribute to his workers at 1/3 the price. You ask Niranjan, he'll happily buy it and distribute to his people. The government gets the basic cost. Cost is about 20% of what the market price may be, 30% of what the market price is. The targeted people will get it. People who employ the poorest are the people who build roads, are the people who build homes, are the people who build buildings. Use them as your channels of distribution. You go through your PDS and 40% will be stolen and will find itself in your Kirana shop. You have to use the system to distribute this. If you do it, I think it's a wonderful idea. Do it the right way. Trust your Indian businessman. Everybody is in an emotional mindset right now. If you I was seeing BBC today. I was so proud. They were showing in BBC when these migrant laborers are hungry. There are some small restaurateurs in Delhi who have got together and started a free kitchen. Makes you proud as an Indian. This is what, if this is the mindset today, if this is the emotional mindset in what we are, if you call all your big builders, your 20 top builders and say, look, you are the guys who hire the maximum number of migrant labor. Why don't you distribute grain to them? They will happily do it for you. And those are the people who need your free food grain. Have faith in your state governments, distribute it free. But do it in a way that 40% of that grain doesn't show up in your Kirana shop.
It's true.
One last question any panelist has got. The Niranjan, Hiranandani, Arvind Datar or Ravi Pandit. Unmute yourself, Ravi, if you have.
I said this was brilliant. This is really the medicine that our rules and regulations require. And no time better than this to make these changes, because I think for once we feel that as a country we are all in the same boat.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful being here.
Was very
Wonderful
glad. And as Niranjan Hiranandani has said, I think President, Vice President are also with us, and we will definitely take up the initiative for publishing. Mr. Hiranandani is also heading ASSOCHAM. We will also take help of ASSOCHAM to publish this widely so that government notices it. Thank you very much, Salve, for being with us.
Thank you.
And we cherish.
Sir, I think
No, just
Mr.
one-
Datar can also compile few of the views and give a write-up to some of the newspapers which are read widely amongst the persons who make the law and the persons who will make the decision for future of the country, as well as the one who will be using it, the country at large. So I think Mr. Datar should also take some initiative of start writing. Yeah.
As Harish said, I keep writing, but it is such a frustrating experience because no matter what you say, it's bad. Remember what Oscar Wilde said: advice is bad and giving good advice is fatal. So I think for example, see we are all chartered accountants. See the drafting of significant economic decisions. I mean, if that law comes into force, virtually you are going to tax anybody in New York, Milwaukee, anywhere, because there's some. You see the e-commerce provisions. I mean, any person who drafts this has no idea. Why can't they discuss this proposal with Amazon, Flipkart, the leading companies, talk to people and find the whole thing? We have forgotten source taxation legislation. Anywhere you can touch your hand and cash the money, you can. Now, I don't know if Harish has it. Under this budget, a non-resident, every person dealing with the Indian becomes the president for TDS. Where are we going? If I just buy something from UK and the UK, if I sell goods, now the shocking thing is if I sell goods to Amazon UK has to deduct TDS and remit it to the government, find a PAN number, find a TAN. And if he doesn't do so, as his agent is liable, something is going seriously wrong, and it's time to reset button as Harish is in a real large way. We are headed for trouble.
Definitely good. I think Chitle Saab is not on
Yes, sir.
board, so it was disturbing. So it was a great suggestion, I can say, from your side.
No, I think it's the institute which must put up a set of proposal to the government. You made that. Harish,
Definitely, Institute will compile for proposal, and even we are asked by Ministry of Corporate Affairs to give some of the suggestions. What all new revenues can be
write up a book.
What new things?
Write up a paper on confidence building measures post pandemic. Pick some of these 7 or 8 big points, not too much detail, and put these provisions in suspended animation for the next 3 years. Let's start with that.
Noted, sir. Yes, sir.
Very good idea, Mr. Salve.
Yeah. Yes,
Definitely, it will be a great thing.
Chitle sir, can I?
Yes. Durgesh bhai, go ahead. Durgesh bhai.
So one thing, sir, I would like to know that how do we prevent economic exploitation by overseas manufacturers who use India-based agents to sell their products, and the transactions suffer tax only on the commission received by the agents and not on the profits made by the overseas manufacturer?
Right now we should stop worrying about economic exploitation. Right now you should worry about getting our factories back on their feet, about getting people back their jobs, and getting life back into sync. Over a period of time, if once India becomes economically strong, you have enough measures in tax treaties to prevent economic exploitation. You don't have to go over the top and make provisions which are not enforceable anywhere in the world, like your TDS, which Arvind just mentioned. We don't have to make a fool of ourselves. There are provisions made in the US law. The US law is very strong when it comes to taxing. Once we have international treaties on transfer pricing, once you have international treaties on place of effective management, once you have treaties on all these positions which allow you to protect your fiscal jurisdiction, stay within those. The rest of the world is doing perfectly well with them. Why should we see with India, we come with this little chip on our shoulder. We come with this little chip on our shoulder saying we are being exploited, we are this, therefore we need to go over the top and make these provisions. And, living here, I've realized this general feeling which is created in India that the world sees India as a land of milk and honey and everybody wants to rush in. Nothing of the sort. You make a hospitable working environment, people will come there. You try creating all these over-the-top provisions, people say, let's source it to Indonesia. Who doesn't want to do this? You know what Ireland did with Apple? The European community was jumping. What did Ireland do with Apple? It called Apple and said, pay 12% flat tax on everything. We reduced the tax rate from 25 to 12%. Come set up your manufacturing operations in Ireland. The Prime Minister sat with the CEO of Apple and negotiated a deal. Why do you think Apple moved a large base to Ireland? This is how people do that. The Prime Ministers talk to big business people saying, come on, how much tax will you pay? Are you going to pay this much tax? Then invest $20 billion in my country. And we'll charge 1/3 the tax. They don't think in terms of economic exploitation. Don't think of tax revenue is not what international business brings to you only. It brings economic growth to your country. It brings jobs to your country. It brings so many other economic benefits. So take a sum total of everything. If somebody has buying from an Indian factory, if he has created 40 jobs, and if that jobs, in India, the biggest problem is jobs per square meter. We are a land-strapped country. If you are going to create jobs per square meter, see the economic worth and value of jobs per square meter. Why are you only looking at how much tax that fellow is paying? So, this blinkered point of view that we will see, if you're paying a lot of tax in India and giving no benefit, you could have somebody who's just using Indian brains, paying a lot of tax in India and exploiting India. I think that would be a bigger exploitation than paying less tax.
In fact, I would
Very
tell
nice
Mr.
suggestion,
Kabra.
Yeah.
In fact, Mr. Kabra, we forget that Section 10A, 10B was the main driver of the entire software growth. You exempted all these software companies from taxation. You may have lost 5,000, 10,000 in tax, but you created 3 lakh jobs. And the kind of money they will spin off is much, much more. And talking of Harish about this, please go to the Singapore website of Economic Development Board. You can create 1,000 jobs, your tax is 10% for 5 years, 10 years. They tell you upfront. Then there's opening after 6 years. Just see the website of EDB, Economic Development Board. We should do something like that now.
I will close with one example. Vodafone has been the biggest thorn in the Indian flesh, the Vodafone tax case. You haven't recovered a single dollar of tax up till now. Not a single dollar of tax. The deal happened in 2009. You haven't recovered a rupee of tax till 2020. But the amount of business you have lost because of that retrospective amendment, you cannot even measure. It will be maybe 5 times the value of the tax, which you may ultimately recover. Okay? That's the Vodafone story. What happened with Vodafone? They also set up a subsidiary in Luxembourg. The British tax department said, we are not accepting this. We think this is unfair tax planning. They went to the European court saying this intercedes with the treaty. European court said nothing of the sort. If the UK tax department wants to get into the question of this is unfair tax planning, they can. That doesn't interfere with free trade in Europe. What did Vodafone do? It sat across the table and settled. There was a £6 billion demand. They paid £2 billion and walked off. And a question was asked in Parliament that is it true that there was a huge demand which was settled for $2 billion? The Chancellor got up and said yes. So what? That was the end of the discussion.